Hello. My name is Christy Kaner. I'm currently completing my field work at Spectrum, and this is my in-service presentation. It's on occupational therapy, working with dementia and Alzheimer's patients with emphasis on sensory integration. So understanding Alzheimer's and dementia, just a quick review because I know most of you probably are aware of a lot of this information. So Alzheimer's is the most common cause of dementia and is linked to genetic, environment, and lifestyle choices. Less than 1% is an inherited gene that if you possess, you will inevitably suffer from Alzheimer's disease. It originates in the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory, and is caused by amyloid plaques and bundles of fiber called neurofibrillary. And these cause neurons in the brain to stop communicating with others and then eventually die off completely. And the reason that I chose to do this on Alzheimer's and dementia is because I really didn't like the feeling of having limited ability to kind of treat patients. The ones that I've seen with multiple and various quotas and OTs that I've kind of followed at Spectrum. And my dad also passed away from early onset Alzheimer's. And that is kind of the reason that I got into occupational therapy. And I feel that occupational therapy can play a very important role in helping treat these patients. I know the acute hospital care setting has its limitations for interventions that can be provided and information that we know about the patients, considering their limited ability to kind of relay that information to us. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of insight on creating and implementing better interventions that will be a little bit more effective for them. So some statistics, 1 in 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. Deaths from heart disease continue to decrease, while deaths from Alzheimer's rose 146%. It is definitely on the rise, as you can probably tell by the patients that come into Spectrum. There seems to be more and more. So understanding the disease and how to treat it, I feel like is going to be very important, especially for the future of occupational therapy. And being able to be effective, we need to definitely learn as much as we can about this disease. So, yep. And then 1 in 10 people age 65 and over has Alzheimer's or dementia. Our sensory system, as we age, is affected, but it also has some effects from Alzheimer's and dementia as well. So that's kind of like two things going against us, since the most common onset of, or the most common reason that people get dementia or Alzheimer's disease is age, is the biggest factor. So there's a decrease in vision with age, but also as related to Alzheimer's disease and dementia, it provides, or it also adds the deficit of contrast sensitivity and spatial awareness. For auditory, as it's related to AD and dementia, there's auditory localization, identification, attention, and comprehension deficits. As far as age, it's more the registration of high-pitched sound. There was something stated in the article that said low-pitched sound has no effect or is not usually affected by either. So that's kind of interesting. Proprioception and vestibular. Vestibular is more linked to AD, and vestibular deficits are actually being researched to be one of the causes of AD, and while proprioception deficits more linked to age. Tactile is more minimally affected by dementia and AD and age. It's not as bad, but the biggest deficit that they did note that is related is heat concerns. So, being able to tell if the water's too hot, kind of thing. I wanted to kind of go over the questions in the beginning because this is a little bit different than how you would normally do it. Normally there'd be the in-service presentation and I might ask it after so we could have the discussion. But I thought I'd ask them at the beginning just so you can kind of be thinking about them throughout and hopefully come up with some good ideas for the answers for them. So how can we incorporate these methods into our program at Spectrum? How can we better ensure that effective methods are passed on in care throughout the patient's treatments? How can we obtain critical information to implement better treatments for our patients with dementia and AD? The article that I chose is Sensory-Based Interventions for Adults with Dementia and Alzheimer's Disease, a Scoping Review. It was published May 8th, 2019 by Bryce Carson Smith and Mariana D'Amico. And some of the frames of reference is a model of human of occupation, biomechanical, and sensory integration. Sensory, so there's 3 different categories: sensory stimulation, which is light, aromatherapy, massage, and snow-zone rooms. Environment-based interventions, art, music, and combined visual and auditory. Occupation-based interventions is dance, yoga, gardening, mealtime, animal-assisted therapy, and Montessori. The study selection and results, articles published between 2002 and 2017. They were peer-reviewed articles with a focus on occupational therapy, scope of practice, with evidence level 1 through 3. There was 1,763 articles reviewed, narrowed down to 47, and over 5,000 participants meeting the criteria for the scoping review. There is a table. I have attached the article, and there is a table on page 175, and it's just a little diagram kind of showing where they started with the articles and the exclusions and why. So they ended up with 47, 32 level 1s, 7 level 2s, and 8 level 3s. The methodology, it examines extent, range, and nature of research on specific topic, in this case sensory intervention for dementia and AD deficits. The purpose is to identify research gaps, summarize research findings, clarify complexity of a concept, and it's ideal for emerging practices. And the reason I chose to do a scoping review rather than just kind of zone in on one research article is because I just feel like there's so much to learn, and I kind of like how it summarizes it all and gives the outcome measures and the results from each. And it just kind of opens up the options available. And I'll help you kind of narrow it down to options available in hospital acute care too, more at the end. So there is sensory stimulation, which is light. There was 2 level 1 and 1 level 2s reported improvements using bright light, morning light, and bluish light. No adverse events. Improvements on sleep, circadian activity, and restless behavior were the most notable. Aromatherapy, 3 level 1, 1 level 2, and 2 level 3s, offering mixed, inconclusive evidence and negative side effects such as skin reactions and nausea. I think that is mostly one of the reasons that they talked about was people's sense of smell being impaired. So like if it's more impaired, it might be effective just because aromatherapy tends to be so strong. So it's not like too overwhelming, but I know for a lot of people who were more in the beginning or moderate stages, the smell was a little overwhelming for them. Massage provided the strongest evidence of results in this scoping review with 3 level 1s, no adverse events, improvements such as sleep, agitation, and short-term mental health. The Snowzone rooms, 3 level 1 and conclusive evidence, no adverse events, and the improvements were short-term benefits, not statistically significant. And if you don't know what a Snowzone room is, because I didn't, it's just kind of like a multi-sensory stimulated relaxing room. It provides like soothing music and smells and kind of tries to stimulate all those senses. I think a big problem with them is that they're not specifically tailored. They can't be specifically tailored to each person. So what might really work well for one, it could work well for maybe a majority, but it's not going to work well for everybody, especially with that smell in there and people being so sensitive. I know a lot of older people over the age of 65 that have sensitivity to smell. So there's that. The environment-based intervention, music, 4 level 1 with moderate evidence, no adverse events, improvements noted such as reduced agitation and negative behavioral symptoms of dementia and AD. I really liked looking into the articles provided in the scoping review for music, just because I know I've seen kind of its effects with my dad. I remember taking him to an Aerosmith concert, which was his favorite band, and this was when he was pretty far along. And I just remember him getting up and dancing and how meaningful that was for me, just to kind of get a glimpse of him and how he used to be. So I was very interested to kind of further look into music, and I'm looking forward to giving that a try with patients as well. Visual and auditory, level 2 provided inconclusive evidence, no adverse events. There was only one study done with this. There was significant improvement noted in this study, but since there was only one, it was kind of inconclusive. The improvements included orientation to mealtime using combined auditory and visual stimulation. And I believe what they did was they had like a tablecloth that they would put out at lunch and a music that they would play. And having that combined, like that visual and auditory, kind of help these patients with Alzheimer's disease or dementia associate like it's time for mealtime. And it did provide pretty significant results. And then there's art, 2 level 1, inconclusive results, no adverse events, and the improvements itself were inconclusive. And one of the biggest reasons that they stated for that was because of the visual processing that is limited by age and dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So since that's so impaired, I feel like they just weren't able to kind of draw any conclusive results from their study. So for occupation-based interventions, there's dance and yoga. There was 4 level 1 mixed results for dance, 2 level 2, and 2 level 3 moderate results for yoga. No negative side effects. Improvements such as cognition, improved physical and mental health, depression, balance, and range of motion. I know that yoga was kind of a big one that was improved. And then for dance, there weren't as many significant results, although I do believe there was one. I'm going to be referencing my table 2 now, which is all of the studies provided in the scoping review, and it's listed out. For dance, I believe it did improve socialization, and then there is gardening, 1 level 1 and 1 level 3 with moderate evidence, no adverse events, and improvements decreased agitation and improved well-being. Mealtime interventions, 3 level 1 presenting moderate evidence, no adverse events, improvements increasing calorie consumption. And I think one of the strategies was increasing the amount of food or making sure to provide the appropriate level of food for each participant. There's animal-assisted therapy. There's one level 1, 1 level 2, and 1 level 3 with moderate evidence. No adverse events. Improvements nutritional intake, interactions, and verbalization and mood. And it seems like the nutritional intake was one that kind of caught me off guard. But also socialization, I believe, was listed in this too. And I think like the animals just kind of provided that increased mood, which increased their wanting to eat. So, and then for the Montessori, 1 level 1 and 1 level 3 with moderate evidence, no adverse events. And improvements include eating behaviors, social engagement, activities of daily living, and psychological well-being. And I know as far as like for sensory with the Montessori, they did stuff like smell identification and taste identification. And then, so overall, there's for sensory stimulation, there's strong evidence for massage, moderate for light, and inconclusive evidence for aromatherapy and snow-alone rooms. And if you look, and then for the environment-based intervention, there's moderate evidence for music and inconclusive evidence for art and visual and auditory interventions combined. In the occupation-based interventions, there's moderate evidence for dance, yoga, gardening, and mealtime, Montessori, and animal-assisted therapy. So kind of going over the tables real quick that I was talking about. The table 1 was the diagram that identifying the systematic reviews and process for article exclusion. Table 2, which I had looked into a lot. I really like that table. It identifies the author and the year of each of the articles reviewed, the level of evidence, the intervention, the outcome measures, and results of each study included in the scoping review. Table 3, honestly, all the tables in this study I really enjoyed because they were really easy to read. They were clearly labeled and very helpful. So table 3 kind of identifies intervention, grade, which is kind of the recommendation rating, which they're all A's except for aromatherapy, snow-alone rooms, art, and combined visual and auditory. Those were the ones that had the most inconclusive. So, but you can see all of that listed on there. There's cost effectiveness, resources available, level of competency needed for therapists, appropriateness for culturally applicable to majority, easy to adapt, meaningfulness, associated positively, not associated negatively, and effectiveness listed on there. So that is extremely helpful. And then table 4, which is on that page 195, and that was a really cool table too. So this provides intervention examples for incorporation into occupational therapy services. And it gives kind of an example for each of all the articles reviewed and like how to incorporate it into your practice. So that's going to be super helpful if you want to take a look at that, and that'll help you identify it's applicable to like the acute care setting. So for instance, like the strong evidence intervention for massage. Example 1, a hand massage can be incorporated at the beginning or end of therapy to decrease agitation during the transition. And example 2, a hand massage can be incorporated throughout the session when the client begins to show signs of frustration and agitation. So that's kind of cool. And it gives an example, 2 examples for each category. The limitations of this study: only full text review articles for level 1 through 3. The lack of translation services available, so that resulted in exclusion of any of the non-English studies. And participants diagnosed with additional psychiatric deficits were excluded. So, based on everything that we kind of looked at, I kind of went through and I chose my 3 favorite, I chose the 3 things that I thought would be easiest to incorporate into hospital acute care that would be effective in implementing treatment for Alzheimer's and dementia patients. So I chose music, massage, and light. I chose them because they were effective, inexpensive, low-risk interventions. So I kind of picked 3 articles that provided good results from each of those categories: massage, music, and light. And I looked into them a little bit further. So the first one was the massage, and I feel like the reassuring communication when words seem to fail. So even like kind of grabbing their hand and gently massaging it, and talking, when talking seems to fail, having that tactile and that connection with them can kind of help. And it also releases oxytocin, which can increase their, improve their mood and reduce agitation. So that's the hand, arm, and shoulder massages were included in that study. And also long, slow strokes. I believe it talked about long, slow strokes also helping on the back to help kind of calm them down and help get them ready for sleep was also effective. For music, the study that I chose, it helped identify appropriate music identified for patients if possible. So like if the patient is able to identify it, that's definitely good. But if not, you can base it on their age and aim for music popular in their teen years and kind of maybe play like a Pandora station and hope that they can relate to it, and a song comes up that kind of like sparks them and grabs their interest. There was significant results on improving depression, anxiety, and aggression with the music, and long-last effects as long as 8 weeks post-treatments. So massage was kind of more short-term, but music had long-lasting effects as for 8 weeks after they even stopped the treatments. So that's kind of cool. And then there's light. Bright light and morning light exposure increased nighttime sleep, most prominent in those with moderate to advanced staged dementia or AD. The results for that one were inconclusive on if bright light increased their activity during the day, but it did help with when they were in a bright light or morning light setting throughout the day. That did help them sleep better at night, because I know there's like sundowning and people waking up when they should be sleeping. So that might be something more for like skilled nursing facilities, but it definitely doesn't hurt to kind of at least help them get better sleep at night, and that will help them hopefully participate during the day to like make sure that you go in and turn the lights on and get them oriented to the day. So words to take from this study. So meaning and end product: familiar activities, combined visual and auditory cues, stimulating greatly reduced senses, and that was one for light too, because their vision might be affected by their age and also by the disease. Having that stronger, brighter light can kind of help. And then tactile senses are minimally diminished. So I think that was such a strong reason why massage is so effective for them too, because it's a sense that is most commonly more minimally diminished, and they can benefit like more greatly from that. So, and then those are my references. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email my instructor, Caitlin, or you can email me at kkayno01@baker.edu. And I appreciate your attention for this in-service, and I hope that you benefited from it and learned something new, and hopefully that you can implement these treatments or implement these ideas into your treatments. There's a lot in this scoping review that isn't relevant to hospital acute care, but I still feel like it's relevant in understanding ways to help patients with Alzheimer's and dementia. And as occupational therapists, I'm sure we can find a way to help incorporate it better into treatments in some way or another. So, yeah, thank you very much.